Mouse PI for Hire is a game I've seen pop up occasionally on my socials for at least the past 2 to 3 years. It commanded your attention with its 1930s rubber hose animation style, which we just don't see in video game form. At first I wasn't sure if it would be a game that would actually materialize or if it was just a concept developers Fumi Games were playing around with. Turns out it's real and it's here, but is there any substance to go with all this style? What's up? How's it going, people? Welcome to Casual Gamer Reviews. If you want to support the channel, then leave a like, subscribe and share with your friends. If you don't like it, then leave a thumbs down and let me know how I can be better for you. Mouse PI for Hire took me 21 hours to complete, reviewed on Xbox Series X. As this game's biggest draw are its visuals, I think this is the best place to start this review. Mouse PI's animation style is the 1930s rubber hose look we see in media like Steamboat Willie. The world is 3D, but the characters inside it are 2D. The color palette is black and white, which Mouse leans into heavier with its crime noir themes. Although characters are 2D, they have so much personality through their face designs. Every crooked tooth, every bent snout, every bruise gives you all the information you need to determine what kind of person you are dealing with. To have this much beautiful detail on a 2D character was sublime. Due to the investigative thread of the story, you'll be engaging in conversation with a large variety of colourful characters, so you really get to see a huge range of 2D models, and I can't say there's a single one I wasn't impressed with. Each one will have a little facial movement or quirk animated in that makes these awesome designs that little bit better. The politician will chew on a cigar for a second before throwing it away. The tweaky cheeselegger will have an eyebrow twitch, and the actress will pout her lips as she tries to seduce. It's all of these small touches that make the character models special. The world itself is in 3D, and the objects you need to interact with, like ammo crates, buttons and so on, will be in 3D also. As the whole world is captured through a noir filter, you may think it would be difficult to distinguish things that you need to pick up or push to progress the level. The developers get around this by putting most interactable things as a slightly brighter shade of white, but by also giving them this over-the-top pulsating animation that makes them hard to miss. I thought they did a really good job at making this easy for the player. The real standout animations are with the weapons and specifically the reloading. This is a cartoon and believe me, it lets you know that. The shotguns, aptly named the boomstick, reload animation sees Jack shove a fistful of shells into the side and squeeze them in, a hilarious and stark contrast to the usual sluggish reload of a shotgun. The Devarnisher, which is an acid weapon, whips an acid-filled pot onto the top in a speedy spinning motion while acid leaks out of the sides. Nearly all weapons have a great reload animation and once again add to the overall attraction of this game's excellently crafted visual style. The different areas and levels you go through as private investigator Jack Pepper blew me away as well. It was just hit after hit of super engaging settings. All areas are bite-sized and linear, which always made them feel like a fun playground. There's a movie studios, a haunted town, a western saloon, an opera house, and of course the mob-ridden New York-inspired streets, to name a few. This game also switches to a comic book art style and cutscenes, which makes it feel like a newspaper clipping you'd imagine would exist almost a century ago. Mouse PI aimed to hit a specific tone and it hit the mark twice over with its visual presentation. If you're like me after seeing this for the first time, you're probably asking, well, how do these visuals translate into a game that you can play? To which I say, I'm glad you asked. Mouse PI for Hire is what I would best describe as a boomer shooter. What I mean by this is that it's a first-person shooter where you enter a room causing enemies to spawn and you must clear them out before you move on. There is a comically large arsenal of guns available to you in order to do this. Obviously, as the game starts, you will naturally only have a couple, but it quickly opens up as you progress through the story. By the end, you will have pretty much everything you could want: pistols, shotguns, machine gun, rocket launcher, acid gun, and all the rest. You can even use the good old-fashioned fisticuffs if you prefer. I described the linear areas as bite-sized playgrounds earlier, and that is relevant here. Each of these areas are filled with explosive barrels which come in fire, freeze, and acid forms too, precariously hanging hazards to be dropped on enemies, walls to be exploded, and bottles of medical liquid, armor, and ammo scattered about. When you enter, it is up to you how you interact with the arena to clear out the foes using the arsenal of guns and all the hazards. As there is no aim-down sights on any of the weapons, it's all hip firing, and that adds to the chaotic fun to be had in this playground. Jump around, spraying your weapon, blow up some hazards, chug a health potion, repeat. It's mindless fun that's effective as a pick up and play option, and for a game of this style, it's perfect. My tip here would be to play with the sensitivity settings, as this kind of shooter does not feel very natural in the modern day. I had to significantly reduce the sensitivity for me to have any kind of control of the shooting, but each person will of course be different. The enemy variety is small and concise, which further boosts the efficacy of this playground. The basic enemies will take a standard amount of hits, smaller enemies slightly less, larger enemies slightly more. It really is as simple as that. You will quickly get the feel of how much an enemy will take to go down using different weapons. Throughout the levels there will be schematics hidden. These schematics allow you to upgrade your weapons back home and keep you powerful. Each weapon that can be upgraded has 3 tiers and will provide all the standard upgrades like damage and magazine increases, recoil reduction, and increased reload speeds, to give you examples. Outside of the weapons themselves, Jack has a dash to dodge and also a kick to stun. I mostly found the kick useful to kick explosive barrels at enemies, which is endlessly fun. The combat switches up completely when it comes to boss fights. There are a lot in this game. They are at the end of nearly every level. As these tend to be 1 versus 1 toe-to-toe standoffs, the arena becomes less like a playground and more like a puzzle. Sadly, I would say this is probably where I had the least fun with this game's combat. Some of the bosses are great, like the early level ones we saw in previews against the robot mouse, where you had to navigate rotating lasers, homing missiles, and shockwaves. There is also one towards the middle of the game that involved a ghost that duplicated itself and summoned hordes of undead, which I loved both visually and mechanically. The final boss is another I would praise, as it is a spectacle fight with many different stages and obstacles to overcome. It was a tough and fitting finale. Outside of these 3 though, I didn't find any of the others that great. The puzzle mechanics of others simply consist of jumping between platforms, running around an arena, or cover shooting, and none of these felt as engaging as clearing out a room full of enemies. Mouse PI surprisingly also has its fair share of platforming. You unlock abilities like a double jump, grapple, wall run, and tailspin to glide. This isn't challenging platforming, as this is a first-person shooter first and foremost, but it was a nice little addition to have added in between the room slaughterhouses. There will be hidden platforming off the beaten track that will usually end in a collectible, so it's worth keeping your eyes sharp. Jack Pepper is a private investigator, and the main drive of this whole game is crime solving. Sadly, this was another disappointment for me, because how that reflects mechanically from a gameplay standpoint is extremely minimal. The vast majority, if not all of them, I'm not completely sure, of clues are scripted, and you can't progress the level until you find them. They aren't even hidden. Once you do get the clues, you can pin them on your board back at the office, but once again this is scripted and are automatically placed with leads automatically solved as you progress the story. I think the game would have benefited much more from having the player actively place the clues and attempt to pin them to a case and draw leads themselves, maybe with a hint option if they got stuck. The result of what we have is an illusion of detective gameplay, but really you're not actively doing anything, it's just a vehicle for the story. The story threads a narrative that circles 3 ongoing mysteries in Mouseburg and the surrounding areas. Bit by bit over the game's runtime, you chip away at the crimes to ultimately shed light on greater conspiracies. Jack Pepper, being a serious and unintentionally comedic private investigator, gets stuck right in the middle of things that may be more cynical than they seem at surface level. I thought the pacing was pretty good, and that was helped by the fact that there are 3 mysteries. You will start the game with only 1, and as you progress you'll be approached to look into 2 more. Sometimes a lead will run dry, and then you will switch to another crime which may have evidence that has a knock-on effect to move the stagnant one along. Sometimes you'll have 2 or 3 leads to follow at once, so you have to choose which one to tick off first. I appreciated how this made it feel like a true noir detective piece of media we'd see in film or TV. The crimes themselves are fun and quirky enough to keep your attention, but the best thing about the story for me, as I've mentioned before, were the characters you meet. They are the things that breathe life into the world, and therefore the things that made me invested with each story beat. In its endgame, the story ramps up to a fever pitch and the gameplay ramps up even more to follow suit. What we get from this is a 2 to 3 hour action flick that takes us through some heavy action sequences and fluctuating gorgeous settings. It was a wild ride, and how I feel a game should approach its ending in this genre. Mouse PI for Hire soundtrack is phenomenal. It's a beautiful beautiful array of smooth jazz and swing that composer Patrick Skelling blesses our eardrums with. It goes seamlessly hand in hand with the visuals and the story to masterfully fulfill this game's vision. There were countless times I took a moment just to listen, relax, and groove along with the different tracks that follow you through every situation. Whether it's the chill vibe of the jukebox in the bar, the sexiness of the saxophone when talking to Vivian, or the perfect chime when you start resolving clues, this soundtrack is simply excellent. The game is fully voice acted too, with the star role of Jack Pepper played by one of the industry's best, Troy Baker. Troy delivers another superb performance here. He's an older, no shits given detective that is constantly throwing out puns, whether that be intentionally or unintentionally. Is another one he can proudly mark up on his resume as a good reference point. Of the other performances, I thought they were all good, but Tammy Tumbler, your weapons specialist played by Cameron Grimes, and Bozo played by Joseph Kapp were standouts too. If you enjoyed last year's Claire Obscure Expedition 33, then you may also notice Rich Keeble, who voiced Monoko, popping up as various side characters in this as well. As for the dialogue itself, I hope you can put up with quite literally cheesy puns, as there's a lot of them. I have quite the affection for goofy things, but I can see how some people may find it cringe. Whilst Mouse is linear in its levels once you go into them, that's not to say there isn't a good volume of side content to accompany your experience. At several points along the story, people will pop up in your hometown to give you side quests which are completely missable. I learned the hard way on this one, as you rarely return to areas, so if you don't complete it at the time, it will be gone forever. They weren't by any means essential narrative beats, which was both a blessing and a curse. A blessing that it didn't really matter if you missed them, a curse because it made it hard to care about them. The best piece of side content for me was the baseball minigame. In every bar dotted around the map, there will be a patron ready to take you on at the baseball card game. It has a simple setup and easy learning curve. The game takes part over 2 innings where you will play as a batter and then pitcher. The rules are simple. Play a card with a higher numerical value than your opponent. Pitchers will have a secondary number that can hold fielders, while batters have a secondary number that shows how many bases they can run. There are support cards that boost the various numerical values, and each hand you play can be up to 2 cards as long as one of them is a support card. You can buy, earn or discover cards along your journey to boost your prowess, and you better believe I was looking around every corner to find them. When you win, you earn tokens that contribute to unlocking the game's secret special weapon, and trust me, it's worth it. Not that the game isn't fun in itself, because it is, but it's always great to have that big reward at the end of it all. Video game developers nowadays are getting increasingly good at creating these simple and addictive minigames, and I hope this trend continues. There are other collectibles in addition to baseball cards to find. These come in the form of newspapers that provide background story for various characters, comic book strips that tell a separate story of Jack Pepper, and lastly, mini figurines that oddly were all the same, at least the ones I found. Often to get these you would have to unlock a safe or a door which comes with its own lockpicking minigame, which I also thought was excellent. Jack, using his versatile mouse tail, creates a game of Snake where you have to navigate around the dangers to the exit. Sometimes these will be timed and even have a move count. Failing these ones will mean the thing is locked forever and you won't be able to get inside, which creates this high pressure situation. I liked having stakes, it made sense to me given this system and there being no consumable lockpicks. Mouse PI for Hire is a fantastic first person shooter that wears its noir detective thriller theme heavily on its sleeve. It never misses the mark with this, as the visual, story and soundtrack all sing together in a sleazy black and white crime filled harmony. The combat is mindlessly fun and that is complemented by the tremendous arsenal of cartoony weapons. It has top quality voice acting, awesome animations, stylistic cutscenes, a well paced story and a remarkable array of superb settings for you to use as your playgrounds. I was however disappointed with most of the boss fights outside of a select few and how the detective side was not integrated into the gameplay to any meaningful degree. Taking all of this into consideration, Mouse PI for Hire gets a casual gamer score of 8.5 out of 10. There are so many games coming out that I've been doing my best to review the ones that I want to do. Please check my channel for recent reviews of Replaced and Opus Prism Peak. If you want to see what games are coming out in May, then check out my Best Games of May video. If you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like, subscribe and share with your friends. If you didn't like it, then leave a thumbs down and I will try to be better next time. Let me know in the comments below if you want to play Mouse PI for Hire, and for everything else casual gamer, keep it here. Peace and love.